The envelope felt heavy, a cold weight against Marcus's trembling palms. For weeks, suspicion had been a slow-acting poison in his veins, driving him to track his wife's every move, every whispered phone call, and every late night away. He believed he was prepared for the worst. He ripped the paper open, the sound like a gunshot in the quiet kitchen. His eyes darted across the clinical text, searching for a single truth. There it was. The paternity test result was clear. The baby was not his. A sharp, jagged laugh escaped his throat, a sound of bitter victory. "I knew it!" he shouted to the empty room, slamming the paper onto the table. But the victory was hollow. As he turned to leave, a smaller line of text at the very bottom caught the light. It read, "Subject is not biologically related to either parent who raised you." The air left the room. Marcus froze, his world tilting on its axis. The drive to his parents' house was a blur of neon lights and the frantic roar of the engine. The night was eerily still, making the sound of his tires on the pavement feel like an intrusion. He burst through their front door. The paternity test crumpled in his fist. He threw it onto the coffee table, the paper sliding across the wood like a dead thing. His mother didn't scream. She simply collapsed into the sofa, burying her face in her hands as if she had been waiting for this moment for decades. His father couldn't even look at him. He stared at the floor, his voice a ghost of a whisper. "We were hoping you would never find out," he said. The words offered no comfort, only more questions. Marcus didn't wait for an explanation. He couldn't stand the sight of them. He turned and slammed the door, the sound echoing through the neighborhood like a final goodbye. Marcus stood on the sidewalk, gasping for air as if he were drowning on dry land. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat of confusion and rage. Just as the silence began to settle, his phone buzzed. It was his wife. Her voice was flat, devoid of the emotion he expected. "You need to come home," she said, and the line went dead. He walked back into his house, but it didn't feel like his anymore. The rooms were unnaturally cold, the shadows stretching long and thin across the floorboards. His wife sat on the sofa, bathed in the dim light of a single lamp, holding the 6-month-old baby in her arms. Marcus approached her, his jaw tight, his mind already rehearsing the demands for a divorce, the accusations, and the end of his life as he knew it. He was ready for a fight, but he wasn't ready for the silence. The baby looked up. Soft locks of hair fell over its wide, innocent eyes. It stared directly at Marcus, its gaze possessing an intelligence that no infant should have. Then, the impossible happened. The baby's lips moved, and a voice emerged. "Marcus," it said. It wasn't a cry or a babble. The voice was clear, deep, and hauntingly familiar, vibrating with a power that shook the very foundation of the room. Marcus stumbled backward, his legs turning to lead, his back hitting the cold wall. He looked at his wife, then at his parents, who had somehow appeared in the doorway behind him. They stood like statues, their faces blank and devoid of surprise, watching him with an unsettling patience. His wife stood up, her movements fluid and predatory. She walked toward him until they were inches apart, her breath cold against his skin. "You were never testing the baby, Marcus," she whispered, her eyes dark and bottomless. "You were testing yourself. You were looking for a lie to hide the truth of what you are." The baby looked at him again, repeating his name. This time, it wasn't a call, it was a command, a sound that resonated in his marrow. Marcus looked down at his hands. They seemed to shimmer, the edges of his skin blurring into the dim light of the room. The floor beneath him felt like water, and the walls began to dissolve into a gray, featureless void. Everything he knew, every memory of his childhood, every face he loved, was peeling away like old paint from a canvas that had never been painted on. The world was gone. There was no house, no family, only the voice of the child echoing in the nothingness. Marcus reached out to touch the floor, but his fingers passed through the shadows. He was the anomaly. He was the secret. As the last of his reality crumbled, he finally understood that the test hadn't failed. It had simply revealed the void where his soul should have been.